Hey, everybody. Today on the AgentXcel podcast, we have our guest, Glenn Neely. What's up, Glenn?
Hey, Chris, how are you? Good morning.
I'm good. Hey, thanks for jumping on. Took us a while to get this coordinated. It's funny because we talk almost every single week because you're my business coach, but business coaching and getting you on a podcast, two different things, huh?
Yeah, getting the technology to work. Yeah,
You noticed I finally told my assistant, I was like, hey, how about you try to get Glenn on this show? I don't think he can tell you no.
And it happened
Thanks,
after a
man.
couple of fits and starts, but it's all good, my friend. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you jumping on. Hey, Glenn, so tell me what you do. I mean, people hear the word business coach. I don't even know if that's what you just would describe yourself as. What would you tell somebody if they ask you what you do?
Wow. It's a pretty broad description because it's different for everybody, Chris. The essence of coaching is not a one size fits all conversation. Everybody has a uniquely different business, uniquely different personality, uniquely different goals and aspirations. And all of that rolled up into a ball. Obviously, we're all human beings. We all have different backgrounds, experiences, how we got here, where we want to go, what we want to get out of life. There's just a myriad of priorities that people put out there, whether it's for their business, their life, supported by their business. Everybody's wired differently. And so presumptively, it's not the same conversation over and over again. Certainly some things recur all the time because it's business related, but each and every person's journey starts somewhere, and I engage with them at some point in time in their journey. And I'm really proud to kind of point to the fact that my average client, and this is just an average of adding up all the years I've been coaching these folks and dividing by my number of clients, that my average client's been with me for almost 9 years.
Oh, wow.
I have half of my clients are over 12 years. So it's a relationship and a journey. And I'm very privileged to be by the side of some very amazingly talented and driven individuals that make me look good. But for whatever reason, we've been able to stay together through pulsing through the growth, the contractions, the changes, the staffing, the buyouts, all kinds of stuff. From that, I've got clients where I started coaching them as maybe a boyfriend and girlfriend, young in their business careers. Now they've got kids going to high school and they've got huge businesses. So I'm very privileged to be kind of vicariously living and watching other people succeed. I think that's kind of the joy for me is after being in business a long time myself, to be able to kind of mutate that into helping other people get where they want to go. To the point, we kind of couch this as what does accountability mean? A couple of just, sterile definitions of it out of the dictionary is an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility for one's actions. That's one definition. Another definition is the fact of being responsible and giving a satisfactory reason for being that way. It's another kind of twisted way of explaining accountability. But the thing I really want to convey to your audience, and I think you're consciously aware of this, is that my job is to interrogate my clients' realities and make sure that those realities are in alignment with what they've stated as their long-term objectives in growing their business, their financial goals, and those kinds of things. And even the most driven, successful folks sometimes waver in their journey to get where they want to go. And that's kind of where I affectionately tell people I get to kick you back into your lane if you're starting to deviate from what we've decided upon mutually and what you've discussed with me as a client is where you want to go. Everybody starts one place and they want to go here. And our job eloquently is to figure out how to fill that gap. What do we have to do? How do we have to do it? How many times do we have to do it? Is that a great strategy? And then devising tactics around filling that gap, wherever that gap is, and everybody has one, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in lead generation, whether it's in recruiting, your own personal production. I mean, there's a myriad of challenges. Everybody in the real estate business has similar ones, some different than others. And I coach teams that have as many as 200 or 300 agents on them, down to smaller teams that have 3 or 4. So it's kind of a very diverse mix, and the challenges for somebody running a team with 200 plus agents is similar but significantly different in a lot of ways than somebody that's running a smaller business. Not that one's better than the other. It's just that's what they've set out to do.
Why do you think people don't have coaches?
Let me, I guess this is the way I could put that out. Most of the clients that I've engaged with that are deciding to spend discretionary income and investing in getting better personally in the way they do things, or getting better in their business. Those folks seemingly, and I, this isn't a science project, I haven't figured it out to that depth, but it seems to me that the vast majority of people that are willing to vote with their checkbook and invest in themselves are also pretty learning based. Okay. And when you have people that are curious and are on a journey of getting better and learning more and always pulsing to do more, those are simply really enjoyable relationships I have with folks. And those are the odds are much greater that the outcomes will be positive, because as much as I'd like to take credit for all the successes of all the clients I've had, I'd also be remiss if I did that, because I'd then have to take responsibility for those that have failed themselves and me. Their responsibility is not to me personally, but their responsibility is to themselves and the commitments that they make to themselves. And I get to kind of be the gatekeeper of those commitments, if you will, checking back in on those commitments that people have made for themselves, not to me. I could tell people what to do all day long, but if they don't tell themselves what to do, the likelihood of it happening is really, really small.
Yeah, I find when you spend some money on something, you just put some focus there. I've had days, even like with my fitness coach that I have right now. I mean, there's mornings where I'll get up in the morning, and if it was up to me, I would probably just go AWOL. I would go one direction, and it would be very emotional based. But I just know I'm like, I got to get on the phone with this person on Friday. And I feel, and someone could say like, hey, couldn't you do that without paying a coach? And I'm like, yeah, I could, but also I can really manipulate myself probably the easiest. So, it's really hard to sit on the phone with someone that you're paying and telling them like, hey, I'm going to do this over and over with you and just give you all my excuses. Do you find, Glenn, do you think more people don't know what they want, or know what they want and don't know how to get there? I always have this question. I'm like, because I sit back sometimes and I go through seasons of my life, as you've experienced with me. And I sometimes sit there and I'm like, do we know what we want and we don't know how to get there, or we don't want to put in the actions to get it, or do we not know what we want? And I'm sure it's different for everybody, but what do you see? Like, just carry on that conversation.
Well, when you look at, what do people want out of coaching, right? That's another way of framing that question. For some people, it can be as limited as they're leadership lonely. They don't have a lot of people to have a discourse about, a high level discourse about, or dialogue around running their business and the challenges of that. That's one element of it. And for some folks, that satiates their need for coaching. Others, it's more strategic. And, we have to figure out the math and figure out what works on a business way and not ignore the numbers. One of, I'm not going to say the greatest failing point, but one of the probably most typical things are people not understanding their numbers, how they impact their business, how those numbers they can use as a big benefit to analyze what's going on, to accentuate the positive, and obviously reduce the negatives. I laugh. My wife was a huge team owner and had a top team in California for decades. And I used to jest with her as being an ex-banker that she only had two keys on her calculator. It was 3% and 6%. Man, she could figure that out in her head. But if we're talking about a profit margin or cost of sale or, other more fundamentally, maybe a little more sophisticated analysis of the real estate business, I guess that's why she married me. I don't know. But everybody, Chris, the question's kind of wide and it's big and everybody gets something different out of it. I think if I asked every single one of my clients, to articulate what it is they get out of coaching, I think I'd probably think that a lot of them would say, well, I feel heard. I know you know my business as well as I do. I think that's one of the facts of why my retention and why clients stick so long with me is that I do understand their business. And many of them go, oh my God, if I got rid of you, it'd take me 2 years to find somebody that could know as much about the business as you do. And so that's part of my investment into understanding at a high level what's driving the business and what's driving my client to want to be in that business and how to succeed. And then lastly, coaching. I kind of consider myself, even in my job description, as a coach and / consultant. Mm-hmm. I myself have run multiple businesses, bought and sold, understand banking and balance sheets and profit and losses and business numbers, which translates well into my types of clients, which are really business people that own real estate businesses, whether it's small or big. And then I have outside clients that are not in the real estate business entirely, but business is business, whether you're selling a house or, selling shampoo, renting pools, running financial statements. We've got a lot of different diverse clients in other industries as well. And it all comes back to the same thing. The challenges are pretty much people and process and profitability. Who you select, who the people are that are around you is the biggest key thing. Creating a replicatable process that systematizes is the last, critical effort. And of course, you do all that to make a profit. So all those things are just inherently business driven. What I frequently am working with clients such as yourself and others, they find themselves at this amazing point in their life where they're doing really well as a real estate agent. And they suddenly decide they want to have a real estate business, which is different than being a real estate agent. And when you start taking on the additional responsibilities of that, I often tell clients that, we're moving from me to we, and we've got to figure out how we transition you from owning a job to you owning a business. And it is a huge challenge for a lot of people. The plumber that owns the plumbing business, the doctor that tries to open his own medical practice. Lots of people can be very skilled as a technician in what they do, but that doesn't necessarily qualify them to move up and become a business owner and act like one. That's the most common journey most people are on.
That was, I think the business consultant is probably the best way to, approach the title. I mean, if I had to really think right now about your role in my life and my business, I would explain to people that's my business consultant, like somebody who has an interest in your business, but actually doesn't get the profits. That's how I would like it. That's interesting. Like you're paying somebody to give you advice, and something that I kind of joke with you sometimes. And I'm like, I barely got through high school, so we're sitting here trying to run sometimes these, $1 million businesses and we don't have any degrees or anything like that. Not saying you need it, but, sometimes I have to give myself a little bit of credit as with like, where would I have learned this? Right. Like I sometimes sit there and I'm challenged on a situation. I'm like, there's a small percentage of the population who's probably even having this dilemma. And I didn't go to school for it. So I've got to find it somewhere, but business consultant would be really good. I remember one of the biggest things is just lately, just so people can kind of hear our journey on how we've of what I've learned a lot from you is just one with the P&L, like you getting clear with me. Cause I was always like lost in the minutia, and you would just be like, hey, it's revenue coming through the door. It's cost to sell and it's expenses. Those are your words would be what? Those are the three levers you can pull.
Yeah, I actually, for the outcome, there's three things that can change, right?
Yeah.
The cost of sale, which is, if you have agents on your team, what you're paying them in commissions or referral fees or that type of thing. The next is the control of your fixed expenses. Those are the only levers you can pull in a real estate business to modify the third thing, which is your profit margin. That's it. There isn't anything else to do. It's that simple. Now, there's a lot of complexities that go into whatever you put on those lines for expenses. However, in its truthful sense, it's pretty simple. It's gazins, gazouts, and what's left over. And the challenge in this market is, as has been forever, is to maintaining profitability while agents demand bigger commission splits, lead purveyors try to charge more for leads. There's a myriad of things that are challenging profitability. And of course, now we've got a swing in the market, and what I've considered the crazy times the last couple of years are probably maybe going to be muted a bit here. And with that, people are going to be challenged to, the first thing everybody comes to think, I got to cut expenses, which is a good place to start and look at. I tell people to go find money in the couch. There's money in the couch. There always is. But outside of that, counterintuitively, most of what we're talking about, and I owe this comment to one of my mentors in coaching, Mr. Tony DeSella, he'd get to the meat of the matter. And the meat of the matter was, we have a prospecting lead gen issue. Okay. It is not an expense issue once you've looked at that, and don't cut off arms and legs, but just look at what it costs you to run your business. Most people come with the idea that they're going to cut those very things, lead gen and marketing. That's the first thing they pick because it's usually a pretty expensive part of their business. So, that's actually where you've got to address it. And if you don't have enough revenue, you got to figure out how to build more revenue. For some people, that's, in your case, it comes through effort and a crafty way of using your checkbook and investing in lead flow. And then measuring your return on investment frequently to make sure it's profitable. And just being adroit that you need to be moving around. The market moves, and so do we. And the cheese move. For a lot of clients over the last year, there's been a real big reduction. One of the most popular lead purveyors from many of the teams and agents has been Zillow. Zillow's not doing what Zillow used to do. The cheese got moved. I know you're personally aware of that. I have several clients that had pretty significant operations and pretty significant revenue streams coming from that particular lead source. And there's others, I won't name them, but there's others that have similar declines. So if that is in fact the fundamental issue, it's not your expenses, it's the amount of revenue that's coming in, and we need to focus on revenue. You can't, literally, it's almost, I'm not going to say it's impossible, and somebody can sure challenge this statement, but what I see is it's really hard to cut to profitability.
It is. Like you've helped me with that clearly. Like you look at certain things almost as if like once you get your expenses dialed down, and a majority of that, like for me, is leverage, right? So you almost only have two options. It's like you're going back to doing work that you don't want to do anymore, yep, or you can go make more money through your door. I like the simplicity of that right there. Now, maybe I don't want to go do one, but I want to do one more than the other. And so one's like take back work, and that's where you're going to find your profitability, or you just go bring more deals to the door. And for some reason, bringing more deals through the door sounds more logical, because then you're not back in admin roles, which doesn't make sense. And I think that once I got my head in that brain space of like bring more deals through the door, then your brain starts getting open to more creative stuff. When you're going into the cut expenses mode, it gets usually very fear mode. When you get into the lead generation mode, you get into the more like, hey, I either got to put out the effort and energy to get this done, or I've got to figure out things to do to bring more money through the door. One, like an ISA, things like that I'm working on. But, it is, it's nice for you to be that sounding board every week where it's, it's very illogical conversation. Like, hey, you can either bring more money through the door or we can cut off, like you always say, arms and legs. And that doesn't sound like the most logical way to do business.
Well, and in your particular case, just to explain, and I'm sure you're very sharing and transparent with folks, one of the things that you've worked on, quite honestly, is your cost of sale.
Yeah.
When you talk about levers, the biggest fundamental difference that you've made, and I think we've been tracking your profit margin for the last 6 or 7 months since you started effectively making that transition. And I believe your profit margin in the last 6 months is over doubled.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to say that I think the last one was 60 some odd percent. And I tracked 6 months of massive improvement. And that was starting out on a strategy of lowering full commissioned agent count and going more into a showing assistant model to leverage you. And while doing that, then that, of course, drives down your total cost of sale because the leads are being executed with the assistance of a showing assistant rather than handing that to an agent on the team. And you drive a 50 or 60% cost of sale to an agent down to 10 to 15% for a showing assistant. So that if you can handle the capacity and pivot on something like that, so that's a great move in this market, a great move. And you're out in front of it. And it came based on me continuing to ask the dark side questions was, when is the stuff with the Z word going to go away? And when it does, do we have a strategy to put in place to, negate that and to be able to continue to move forward? And I think the revelation of the Z word going away early in the year, and then you correlate that to your increasing profit margin. Oh, really? You're actually making more money today of every dollar that's coming in by double than what you were doing at the beginning of the year. That's pretty amazing against the backdrop of this market. So I give you some credit.
I'm so excited that, when we're going through this kind of stuff, it feels very hard, but like, for example, that account going away, it's one of those things. And I try to always remember this when I'm going through something that seems big at the time. I always try to remember like of something that happened big to me like 5 years ago. And I realize like how small it feels now when I'm outside of it. Yeah. And so when I was going through that, I would always like, that would be my safe place is like, like I can think of other things 5 years ago, 10 years ago that were the biggest thing in my day. And over time, it just actually feels so little. That's how I already feel that way 3 months later. Like I have no interest in I've already put my energy in pay-per-click and, now the ISA, and you just start looking up and you're like, you sometimes need things to happen to you that you don't necessarily like. I wouldn't have voted that day for that to happen, but sometimes you just need God to like say like, hey, this is how this is going to go down. Like you can participate in it or participate in it. Like, and so it's a huge blessing, but also I think that people should know that, and I doubt you, I don't think you probably want to be called this, but like sometimes you can actually be like a business therapist. Would you agree?
Uh-huh. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Do you have a different, I always wondered when I'm talking to you, like, do you mirror the person you're coaching? Do you have a different style with everyone on how you coach, or is there just like seasons? Seasons of life we all go through where you're like, hey, like this is going to be a month of just like picking them up and, let's go get it, bucko. And then there's other times where it's, the glory days and you're just riding high with them.
Hey, I think it's a fair dose of cheerleading when it's appropriate, steel-toed boot when it's appropriate, and not letting people get complacent. Certainly I've been in business with a lot of really super successful real estate people. But one of the things I've learned about the really successful people in real estate is they're never satisfied. So keeping them keenly on edge of, I've got tons of stories of clients that had these big, huge theoretical milestones that we worked on and, for a year, 2, 3, 5, whatever it was. And we'd hit the milestone and it would be kind of like this. Yeah, that's awesome. Now what? I mean, literally, I'm like, holy crap. It was like the biggest thing for 5 years. And now it's like, okay, now we got to do something else. But that seems to be kind of a consistent theme is the higher level people I coach, and that certainly doesn't infer any of them are lower level, but the folks that are completely pulsed about never being satisfied, it's kind of a blessing and a curse all wrapped up in the same blanket. Because you're sitting there fretting over all of this at the same time that you're doing a great job. And it's like, it's paradoxical. It is bizarre. I find it kind of amazing. I'm obviously an observer of people's behaviors. And then as a funny tease about my job description is, when friends or people that don't really understand what I do, they go, so what is it you do? Well, I said, well, I help people get out of real estate. He says, so what are you talking about? What is that? People pay you. Don't you work with like real estate people? I go, primarily, and other businesses. And he goes, so you coach them to get out of real estate? And I go, yeah, because everybody that I've ever run into has a vision in the future of somehow not being in real estate, either owning a real estate company, but not, as I tease you guys in Phoenix and Arizona, not getting sweaty back in people's living rooms. Okay. I don't know what they say in Minnesota, but that's what they say there. And so, a lot of people have that vision, and a lot of people come to the table with an expectation that that's going to happen. And they've got an expectation of what amount of time that's going to happen. I had a call 2 weeks ago with someone who was referred to me. And so I'm kind of inquiring with them about what their plans are, what they're doing, and all that stuff. And honestly, the guy goes, well, I want to have a 7th level business, which means he doesn't want to be doing any real estate. He just wants to own the business. And in 1 year, I want to open another business in a foreign country. And I want all that to happen in 12 months.
Wow.
And I said, so how much are you looking to get on a monthly basis from the business if you're just going to own it? He gave me a number, and of course, I looked at the financial statements. He wasn't making that much money now. So how are you going to make that much money not working there and opening a business in a foreign country a year from that? It was the equivalent of restaurant impossible. I was like, well, I'm just really honest with you. Based on my experience, I think that's a really aggressive timeline, not impossible to do, but I wouldn't take the assignment trying to help you do this in 1 year. I just won't do it. I'm sure he found somebody that would tell him he would. But, based on my experience, I don't think that's true. One of the things, Chris, that doing this for a long time, they talk about mastery of anything is at least 10,000 hours of that. And again, you learn a lot, having a lot of conversations with a lot of high level people. And I've done that for, 15 years. So it's, I've had 35,000 hours of conversations with people. And so some things show up a lot and some things are very unique. Back to what you're talking about. Everybody is different and the conversations are different. One day it's a business therapist for you. The next call, it could be fundamentally reviewing a profit and loss and looking for improvements based on changes that have been made. The next one might be talking about recruiting candidates and looking at behavioral profiles. I mean, literally, it's all over the place. So there's not, and of course, versatility as a coach is really important too. When you have a wide breadth of background, you can lean into some of these things without being outside of your core competency. And that's take nothing away from coaches that don't consult, that only coach, but coaching is the art form of asking questions and getting self-discovery on the part of the client, and interrogating the reality. That's kind of what coaching, question-based coaching models get you to do, picking options, stretching clients to come up with ideas on their own. As I mentioned earlier, me telling somebody to do from the consulting side, frequently they go, wow, that's great. I'll just do it. There are others that not so much. and I have to kind of trick them into becoming their idea. And if I get it to be their idea, then it's amazing all the magic that happens. So there's an art form, there's a science, there's a little bit of trickery in there that I don't want to disclose to everybody on the call. It's all modeling, it's all questions, and it's things that I've done before. And at this point, Chris, literally with the number of clients I've coached and my experiences, there's not much I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I remember when we first started talking, I remember you telling me like, hey, like most people, want to get out of the business or own a business, I should say. They want to have people helping them. And, it was interesting because I even remember when we first started chatting, I was like, no, I'm all in, man. Like I'm all in.
Yeah.
And you said, hey, things might happen in life or things might change where, you have a different perspective. And I have to say, just in the time that we've been, talking, it's changed a lot for me. I think it's so interesting how I don't know if it was just markets or seasons or age or what it might be, but, or it may be just like a financial position in life, but you do get to a point where I can't say I want to get out of real estate. Right. But I mean, there are days now where I wake up more than ever. And I was like, whoa, that role was actually fun 2 years ago. And it was kind of fun a year ago. And it was willing to be put up with 4 months ago to keep my profits. And then you finally just get to a point where you're like, I don't know, like I actually might give away some of my profits not to do that anymore. And I'm finding out that it could just be, I think Big Kenny said it one time, like, you can have leverage to go do a more dollar productive activity, or you can get to a point in life where you just have leverage so that you can go watch Netflix.
Yep.
And there is times in life now where I just look at things and I'm like, hey, like I've got to have that person to keep the business running. I have to have that person and I don't want to do it. And it's not even like hiring that person to go do a more dollar productive activity. It's just to keep the business running. You have to have it. I don't want to do it. And so I'm willing to throw some money back over maybe from my profit side just to keep the company going. But
that basically taglines into, if you just said, what's the biggest percentage of topics that you talk to people about? And I would tell you outwardly, it's people. All of us succeed through others. We succeed through ourselves early on. And then as you grow and you prosper and you're owner creating a business, to your point, the leverage, the identifying that leverage and putting it around you to support the outcomes that you're looking for are probably 70% of the conversations. Because, you could have the best idea in the world and there's nothing unique or patented around real estate sales per se. So then it gets down to, why is one person better than the other? Why is one business better than the other? And they all have the same, everybody wakes up in the morning. Every real estate agent in your market or everyone in the United States wakes up every morning with the ability to sell all the same houses. Everybody, it's an even playing field every morning when you wake up. Why is it that, give or take, 15% of the agents are closing 85% of the business? That's not a mistake. But it goes to tell you that there is a big difference between people, particularly people that you either bring in to be agents or people that you bring in to be administrator or support or operations people or lead generation. It's the essence of an art form that's frequently unloved and people don't know how to go about it. And they're frustrated with it. Nobody likes the turnstile of people coming in and leaving. But I have a strong conviction around that, and I'll share it with you, even if you're not asking. What I've noticed, and I certainly had the same exact phenomenon in the businesses I owned and managed, that there is a big difference between average and good. And the big difference comes into the word personal motivation. Okay. And I know we've touched on this a bit.
Yeah.
Arguably about 10% of the adult population you can consider to be, quote, personally motivated. And so what does personally motivated really mean? That's a big phrase. But what is it? You'll know it if you see it. It's even kind of hard to describe it. But here's what I would tell you. It's the definition of people that operate with discretionary behavior. In other words, they do more than what's expected, either expected of them by their leadership or their boss or whatever, but more importantly, what they expect of themselves. Okay? So when people are, quote, personally motivated, they show up differently. And I ask clients this all the time. So who's your most personally motivated agent on the team? Billy, Sam, Sue, whoever it is. I go, isn't that amazing? Okay. So what would it be like if everybody on your team is like that? And you hear this big, deep sigh. It's like a big relief. Oh my God, my life would be amazing. Leadership would be so easy, because I'm not going to have to be leading people and bludgeoning people to do their job. They're going to do it on their own, and I'll be there to help them do more. But it's not about getting them to do it in the first place. They do it on their own. And I think all of us have been around people like that. Business owners all interacted with people like that. So the challenge is, if it's only 1 out of 10 people, the odds are 90% that you got the wrong person.
Yeah.
Hired out of the broad population, that 9 out of 10 people won't be personally motivated. Yet the people that make the biggest difference in businesses are those that are. And as I've encouraged you and others that are my clients, I use the phrase, it's like a big little league tryout. Try out a bunch of kids. You'll end up with a good team, and hopefully more personally motivated than not. And the phrase I like to use is have a big front door, and in sales in particular, invite them in for a tryout. But the minute you see that they, can't swing the bat or throw a ball or sink a hoop or however you want to put it, then you've got to have an equally big back door to invite them to leave. And if you cycle through enough folks, you're likely to end up with a census of people that's greater than the general population of personally motivated people. And I've seen a direct correlation to profitability and the lack of the word accountability on the part of the owners of those teams, where they've spent the time sorting through people to find personally motivated people. It's fascinating to me, but there's a big thing, and it happens. And I can hear when I'm talking to my client, when they explain how this person is or that person, you can almost instantly know whether they're personally motivated or not, just by what they're regurgitating to me about what they did yesterday or last week or whatever. So I think that's an underserved facet, because a lot of people think this accountability thing, that you as the owner or they as the owner are going to bludgeon baby seals with a baseball bat to get them to do what they're unwilling to do for themselves. Back to accountability, which is an obligation of willingness to accept responsibility for one's actions. It's as simple as that. But that's accountability to yourself, not to me.
When you say personally motivated, what do you find that most people are personally motivated by?
Oh, that's a good one. The affectionate, I guess the best thing that most people have heard, it's called the big why. Okay. Everybody has a big why. Some people's big why is bigger than others. But if you ask the question, the vast majority of people, when you say, well, why do you get up in the morning, drive left out of the driveway and go to your job? And why do you spend 10 hours a day there? I mean, what's behind that? Most people will obviously express the easy answer, well, it's the money. Well, but that's not the answer. And you need to keep asking questions to dissect that, to find out exactly what it is that's driving them. It's the money, but what will the money do for you? I'll never forget, I had early on in my coaching career, I had a client that I was investigating, so why do you do this? Why is this important to you? What's behind this, you wanting to do this? And she said, well, my grandmother has cancer, and I'm going to pay for the operation. She doesn't have insurance. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty big lie. And, give or take 3 months later, the client had made some personal commitments about what she was going to do in lead generation and door knocking and whatever. And comes to the call, and I said, so how'd you do on what you committed to do over the week? And she goes, oh, I didn't do it. I was like, wow, that's really disturbing. I said, so how does that true up with you paying for your grandmother's cancer operation? And there was stunned silence, and you could hear the tears. And from that day forward, there was never a missed obligation or anything. Now, every now and then you have to, recenter people and remind them of that. But the honest God truth is everybody has a big lie, Chris. I know you had a driving big lie for the first several years in your business, and that was to acquire a whole heck of a lot of investment properties. And that drove you in a single-minded focus. And that got you across the goal, but you didn't deviate from it. And you're very strong to your commitment that I'll do the things I have to do to hit that goal. That's self-motivation. Nobody had to tell you. In fact, you didn't even have a coach then.
No, I didn't. And that's probably the most interesting thing that Britt and I talk about anymore when it comes to like goals in our company. Mm-hmm. And I was having this conversation yesterday on a Zoom with some people, and it was almost like we say things that we want, but then I try to take it back. Then I'm talking like internally, I'm talking to myself right now, but like say something I want. And then I have to start questioning myself. And I'm like, am I really going to deal with everything that's going to come for the next 3, 6 months or a year to get this goal? Because yep. if it was just make goal and wake up and everything was easy, then we'd all have those goals, right? Like you can think of like getting a muscle or losing weight or making a lot of money, or like every one of those things. When you think about it, like the goal actually sounds fun, right? Like sitting on the beach and having an ab sounds fun with your shirt off, right? But then you think of like the 7 months of no chips and salsa, probably eating chicken and broccoli. I'm probably not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. My weekends are probably going to be different. But I think that's where I'm getting into a place where when I say something, I almost want to like sit there for a while, or whether it takes a day or a week, and decide like, am I really committing to this? Because the second I say yes, you almost have to deal with a lot of stuff for a long time that isn't fun. Even like in business right now, Britt and I kind of have a joke. Anytime we have a goal, we look at each other and we say, there's going to be a lot of processes over the next 2 months that neither one of us really want to do, but that's the only way. Like, when a client expects me to get there tomorrow at 2 p.m. to list their house, I'm there because I have a reputation and I won't lose it. Now I'm trying to figure out, like, when Britt and I say we want to do something in our business, no one knows out there that I want this much more. Right. So like, it's actually now saying like, I have to have an appointment with myself. The client at 2 p.m. I'll be there, but then at 3 p.m. when I'm supposed to be doing this and I'm the only one that knows about that goal, now how do I show up? So now it's like a reputation with myself. And that's what I'm trying to reconcile now, because for 17 years, I've had a good reputation in the community. And that's why I sell real estate and a lot of it. Now I'm trying to figure out like, how do I get that reputation with myself that when I say I'm going to do something, I'm actually going to do it? Because I think it can actually build and compound over time, that when you break these little promises with yourself, you start not trusting yourself anymore. And then you do it again. Then you say, oh, well, now I want to do this. And then you don't get there. And then 3 months goes by and you're like, well, I didn't get that one either. And you're like, do you really start not trusting yourself? So I'm looking at myself now and I'm saying like, do I trust myself? Like, did you make a goal with yourself? And that's really important to me moving forward, is just, am I making promises to myself and am I keeping them? Because like, if I'm not keeping them with myself, then like, who else? Like, you should value, and I know it sounds super selfish, but I'm like, you have to value your own word.
Right.
Just like your own internal mind and your word on what you say. Like it can bring you to a low or a high, I think, just based on keeping your commitment. So yesterday on that Zoom call, it's what I was saying to the crew that I was on is, let's start thinking more about what we say we want. Let's not just throw out like this goal, that goal, this goal. Let's really, like, when we write down the goal, like write down the 37 things over the next 90 days that you're going to actually sacrifice to get there. And if that didn't look like, if you couldn't look at that on paper and get through it emotionally, you ain't doing it when it's Tuesday at 9 a.m. and you got to eat chicken and broccoli. Like if you couldn't get through the easy of just putting it on paper while you were eating your chips and salsa, thinking about it, then it's not going to happen. So I take that back to stuff like that because it's always relatable to people. But yeah, anymore, I'm really hard on these like personal goals and what I'm trying to accomplish. And like even you and I, just so people kind of know the dynamic of coaching, is we went through probably a season of the last 4 weeks, maybe 6, where it's really been that trying to find out what next missions are and really deciding like, what are we signing up for and what are we not signing up for? And I think it's cool to tell people sometimes, like, if that was a goal and it's not anymore, just own up to it. Be like, hey, like I thought I wanted that. I've went through the journey of trying to get it. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm cool with that. I think it's better to find peace in just stopping something than lying to yourself and saying you want to accomplish it and just really just beating yourself up over it every single week that you're not getting there.
Well, and to pile on that, I've had any number of instances over the years where, the team or the business or the brokerage or whatever has a amazing business plan and tremendous goals and objectives that they're looking to deal with. And, that part of my process is in the fall is to review everybody's projections and their business plans for the following year. And my job is to interrogate that and go, okay, how's this going to happen? How are we going to move from 50 closings to 500? Well, that's because my agent said that's how many they're going to close. Okay. But it's almost more deflating to your point about this, that if you set unrealistic or unobtainable goals, that they work against you, not for you. Good, reasonable, rational goal setting that you feel is within your control and outcome can really spur you to take you across the finish line and push you to do a little bit more. Unrealistic or unobtainable goals do the exact opposite. They take the fire out of your belly, they defeat you, and long before we're even into the first quarter of the next year, we're staring at results in which the business plan and the projections are stored away nicely in a file drawer on a computer and never looked at again. So, having some broad degree of reality in these projections is really key. And I've had a couple of clients, be unwilling, even halfway through the year, only being at 10 or 20% of their goal, to be able to reset their goals. I go, it's to no advantage to have a fictitious goal that's never going to be met and have your crew sitting there looking at it going, wow, we're never going to hit that.
You can't go.
Really exciting.
You can't go to the bank and cash a goal.
No,
man, I wish you could. So what makes you, and we'll kind of wrap it up with this, Glenn, is what made you, I know I got referred to you for coaching. I remember talking to you, I was in Rocky Point the very first time. Mm-hmm. And you were asking me some questions and, we decided to start this journey, which is really cool. What made you, do you select everybody for coaching, or is it something where it's only like referrals, or do you even take on coaching clients? Like, how does that even work for you?
Look, I take everything one by one. I never say I have a full calendar, because if I did, I might have missed out on some exceptional people that I took and added to my calendar, and it's been awesome.
Yeah.
I try to restrict my number of clients so I can really fully be invested in them and not have so many that you can't remember the conversation. You don't know what's going on in their life. I literally know what's going on with most of my clients, some at a level that people go, that's not normal. So for me, I love working with driven entrepreneurial people. And when the opportunity popped up to work with you, I could clearly see this was a man on a mission. You had definitely had a track record of success of doing the things that you were setting out to do. And I thought there was a big blank canvas of a better way to run your business. And you've been really transparent about where the weak spots are. Mm-hmm. And thus far, I think, given all of the machinations of change that you've had to adjust to and the way that your business was being run and your lead sources, et cetera, that where we are today is a very plausible outcome. But to the real great question is now, I mean, I love working with great people, and everybody's at a different part of their journey. I mean, I spent hours on the phone this weekend with one of my clients who's transitioning out and getting ready to kind of sell their business. That's the end of the journey conversation. And then, I've been in business with people that are in the middle of the journey and some that are kind of at the beginning, but it's really actually very much fun to be a vicarious member of each one of my clients' board of directors. And that's kind of the way I look at my role. When Chris comes and says, we're going to do this cockamamie stupid thing, and I'm the guy that's chewing on the cigar over in the corner going, really? And tell me more about that. And I think, that having that and not having an echo chamber is something everybody's looking for, because, people do want to make great decisions and they do want to do the right thing. And sometimes by asking a few questions, they can self-discover that maybe that's not in their own best interest. Yeah. And as I tell clients, I go, the consulting part of it is, if I've seen 50 clients before you in the last 15 years that have done that exact thing and face planted, I'm not going to do coaching. I'm just going to tell you 50 people came before you and they all face planted. Maybe that's not a good idea. Or we could take an entire half hour and I can ask you a bunch of questions about it and have you conclude that you shouldn't do it. That's kind of where it's at.
There we go, man. That's why, I enjoy having you in my life. I'm actually looking more as I write down my future and where it's going. I want to have more people in my life that tell me things sometimes that I don't want to hear. Yep. And I'm actually willing to spend more of my dollars anymore in my future to find those people to come into my life that aren't yes men. I think sometimes we have friends, we have spouses, we have employees, and sometimes they feel like they're just supposed to be there to just say yes. Like they're just supposed to be the encourager of your quote unquote great idea. Mm-hmm. And I want to be around people anymore that when I'm in the room with them or I'm on the phone with them, that they're challenging me on my statement. They're asking me to think of it from a different way. Maybe there is some good ideas there, but someone that's just always willing to say the truth no matter what. And that's what I find that we're lacking in we're lacking in a lot of our relationships in life, whether it's personal or business, of people that will just genuinely tell you the truth. And I have a joke with all of my friends, family. I'm like, always tell me my flaws, what I need to get better at. Because like, if you're, that's my love language. Like, tell me what I need to get better at, because I wouldn't know how to be a better human being if you didn't tell me that I wasn't succeeding with you. And I don't know how to succeed with you unless you tell me, because we're all really complex people. And so I'm super thankful for meeting you and just being with me through my journey. And sometimes my 4-year-old hissy fits that I have on the phone, because I've had a few of those. And it's always fun to get off the phone and my wife's like, hey, how was your coaching call today? And I'm like, I think Glenn got the earful today. I don't know if he might've got 4 words and he was kind of therapeutic.
And that, was the way you asked earlier. It's not it can't have a one size fits all thing. Yeah. Then it's disingenuous and you're not listening.
Yeah.
And how could I talk to you about your life and your business and take that and just roll it to the next client? I think, and this isn't touting my horn, but I do know that one of the things that affects coaches and people in the coaching industry is turnover. Mm-hmm. Okay. Some people come to the coaching relationship, and I've certainly had them, where they're very mercenary. They want to learn a specific thing that they don't know. Financials is a good one. They'll coach with me for a couple of years to get everything down on just exactly how do I look at a P&L? How do I pull the levers? This is really incredibly important for me. And then they move on to their journey and find a coach that can embellish or help them do something different. That's how some people look at it. Most of my clients, I think they think I'm an old shoe or something. We can't get rid of them. But it, again, as I tell them, after being coaching with them for 10 or 12 years, it's like, every call, we're not going to recreate the wheel or reinvent fire, but they do know that if they need good, advice and have an issue that they want to have a dialogue around, that they've got an impartial third party to have that with. Many of my clients, they'll deal with a market center owner or a broker or a this or a that, but they're not really in a leadership capacity or in a way of giving them business advice. And I think kind of that's what I get to fill the void with as well. So
do you,
on your show? That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and you did not ask to be on here. I want to let everybody know that. So I don't want anybody to think that you had requested to be on the show. And actually I had to get Glenn to get on the show because I felt as if you weren't looking for any clients. But as I wrap up the show, I want to ask you, do you promote your coaching, or is this more like a speakeasy, backdoor, have a password? Because I felt like I was going to like a speakeasy when I met you. Like I went through this like library and I knocked on a back door and I'm like, hey, is Glenn in here? And they're like, who are you? And I'm like, here's the password. And they're like, oh yeah, Glenn's back here. And then I had this call with you and you were sizing me up on whether you wanted to work with me. And I was like, this guy's got a good gig. I can't wait for the day where I get to like walk into people's place or they're seeking me, give me the password. I'm like, yeah, I'll list your house. Yep. I'm that guy.
I have been blessed by a lot of great teachers and mentors to get to this point. And I've also been blessed by a whole hell of a lot of amazing clients that have been very willing to refer, and I know your business is primarily by referral.
Yep.
And it's a great place to be when you don't have to lead generate. And that's by no means, and I'm trying to be trite about it or egotistical. It's awesome to be in that position. Yeah. I love it. But I'd encourage anybody that, has a business they want to grow and has some business challenges. I'd be more than glad to talk to them complimentary. And there might be something where there's the potential of a great fit that would be, give me some endorphins from working with it. You're probably my newest client. And now we're almost a year and a half or whatever into it. Uh-huh. And hopefully, 10 years from now, you'll be inviting me in my walker on your show. But I really enjoyed being here.
Appreciate it, man.
It is a speakeasy. So
okay, cool. Hey, well, you guys, you know his name, so I guess if you can Google him, find him.
If they have anything, they can just simply use my email address. My business email address is consult. The word consult, CONSULT, Glenn, GLENN @gmail.com.
Cool, man. Glenn, I appreciate you.
All right, brother. Talk to you on our next call.
Thanks, buddy. Bye.
All right. Bye.